The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, carried by ships that looked like living crystals floating through space. Ambassador Hyun-woo Kim stood at the observation deck of Luna Station, watching the alien vessels drift closer to Earth's moon with their strange, pulsing lights. He had seen many alien ships before, but these were different. They moved like dancers, spinning slowly as they approached the station. Each ship was the size of a city block, made of what looked like blue-green glass that changed colors in the starlight. "Sir, the aliens are requesting permission to dock," said his assistant, a young woman named Haewon who had worked at Luna Station for 3 years. She looked nervous, which was unusual for her. Hyun-woo nodded. "Grant them permission, and send word to Admiral Park on Earth. Tell her our guests have arrived." The alien ships docked with a sound like singing bells. When the airlock opened, 3 creatures stepped through. The first was tall and thin, made entirely of what looked like living crystal. Light moved through its body like water, and when it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes. "I am Kelthra of the Crystal Dominion," it said. "We come with words of great importance." Behind Kelthra came a creature that looked like a walking lizard, but one that stood on 2 legs and wore robes of deep purple. Its scales were dark green, and its eyes glowed like yellow lamps. When it breathed, small puffs of steam came from its nostrils. "I am Vorthak of the Scaled Republic," the lizard creature said. Its voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding. Together, the third alien was the strangest of all. It looked like a person-shaped cloud of silver mist, constantly shifting and changing. Sometimes it had arms, sometimes it didn't. When it spoke, the voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I am Nethys of the Void Walkers," it said. "We 3 represent the Galactic Coalition, and we have traveled far to speak with humanity." Hyun-woo bowed slightly, as was proper when meeting new species. "Welcome to Luna Station. I am Ambassador Hyun-woo Kim, speaking for Earth and all human colonies. Please, let us go to the meeting room where we can talk in comfort." The meeting room was large and round, with windows that showed Earth hanging in space like a blue and white jewel. The aliens sat in chairs that had been specially made for different body types. Kelthra's chair was made of metal that conducted light, while Vorthak's was heated to keep his cold-blooded body warm. "We will speak plainly," Kelthra said, light pulsing through its crystal body. "The galaxy is at war. For 47 years, the Galactic Coalition has fought against the Vrathan Empire. They are a cruel and savage people who seek to destroy or enslave all other life." Vorthak leaned forward, his yellow eyes bright. "The Vrathan have destroyed 17 worlds completely. They turned planets into ash and dust. Billions have died fighting them. The silver mist that was Nethys swirled faster. We have watched humanity for many years. You are young as species go, but you have shown great skill in war and peace both. Your ships are well made, your soldiers are brave, and your people are clever." Hyun-woo listened carefully, but he already knew what was coming. Earth's intelligence services had been watching the Galactic War for years, even though they had chosen to stay out of it. "We invite humanity to join the Galactic Coalition," Kelthra continued. "Fight beside us against the Vrathan Empire. Help US end this war and bring peace to the galaxy." "And what would humanity gain from this?" Hyun-woo asked. Vorthak's tongue flicked out briefly. "Technology beyond your current understanding. Faster ships, stronger weapons, better medicine. Access to trade routes that span the galaxy, resources from 1,000 worlds. Your colonies would be protected by coalition fleets," Nethys added. "Your people would never want for anything again." Hyun-woo nodded thoughtfully. "These are generous offers. But joining a war is not a decision we can make quickly. I must speak with my government." The aliens agreed to wait. For 3 days, they stayed on Luna Station while Hyun-woo sent encrypted messages back to Earth. The President, the Global Council, and the military leaders all needed time to think. During those 3 days, Hyun-woo spent time with the aliens, learning about their species and the war. He discovered that the Coalition controlled about 60% of known space, while the Vrathan Empire held the rest. The war moved slowly, with battles fought over months or years for single star systems. Why has this war lasted so long? He asked Kelthra as they stood looking at Earth together. The crystal being's light dimmed slightly. The Vrathan are not like us. They do not think as individuals. Their entire species shares one mind, controlled by their empress. When one Vrathan dies, the others feel it, but they do not mourn. They simply make more soldiers. They grow their warriors in great tanks, Vorthak explained. Each one is the same as the last. They know no fear, no doubt, no mercy. They attack until they win or until every one of them is dead. This troubled Hyunwoo. A species with no individuals, no free will, sounded like something from a nightmare. On the fourth day, Admiral So-Min Park arrived from Earth aboard the battleship Seoul. She was a small woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had fought in the Mars Colonial War and the asteroid belt conflicts. If anyone understood war, it was her. The Admiral met with the aliens in the same round room. She listened to their offers and their warnings about the Vrathan Empire. When they finished speaking, she asked only one question. How many of your people have died in this war? Kelthra's light pulsed slowly. The Crystal Dominion has lost 4 billion souls. The Scaled Republic has lost 7 billion, Vorthak said, his voice heavy with sadness. The Void Walkers have lost 2 billion, Nethys whispered. Its form growing dimmer. Admiral Park was quiet for a long moment. And you want us to add human deaths to that number? We want you to help us end the killing, Kelthra replied, too. Days later, President Jae-Won Lee arrived on Luna Station with the Global Council's decision. The president was an older man with kind eyes and steady hands. He had led Earth through 15 years of peace and prosperity. The final meeting was held in the station's largest conference room. Representatives from every human colony attended by video link. The alien ambassadors sat across from President Lee, waiting to hear humanity's answer. President Lee stood up slowly and looked each alien in the eye, one after another. The United Earth government has considered your invitation carefully. We have debated in our councils, consulted our military leaders, and listened to our people. He paused, and the room was completely silent. Our answer is no. The aliens did not speak for several seconds. Finally, Kelthra asked, You refuse to help end this war? We refuse to join this war, President Lee corrected. Humanity has chosen the path of peace. We will not send our sons and daughters to die in a conflict that began before most of them were born. Vorthak's scales darkened with anger. The Vrathan will not leave you alone forever. Eventually they will come for your worlds too. If that day comes, we will face it, Admiral Park said firmly. But we will not go looking for war. The alien ambassadors left Luna Station the next day. Their crystal ships departed without ceremony, heading back into the dark spaces between stars. As Hyunwoo watched them go, he wondered if humanity had made the right choice. Earth had chosen peace over war, prosperity over power. Time would tell if that choice was wise or foolish. 3 years passed since the aliens left Luna Station. Earth continued to grow and expand among the stars, but now they did it their own way. Instead of building weapons and warships, humans built farms and laboratories. Instead of training soldiers, they trained scientists and farmers. Dr. Yoonji Choi stood in her laboratory on Mars, looking at a piece of alien technology through a powerful microscope. The metal was unlike anything found on Earth or any human colony. It seemed to repair itself when damaged and could change its shape when heated. Where did we find this again? She asked her assistant, a young man named Taemin who had joined her research team last year. The exploration ship Bizan found it in the ruins on Kepler 442b, Taemin replied, checking his notes. Captain Yoon said the ruins looked thousands of years old. This was the only piece of technology still working. Dr. Choi nodded and made notes on her computer. For 3 years, she had been studying alien artifacts found on dead worlds. Some coalition species had given her samples of their technology in exchange for human agricultural techniques. Other pieces came from ancient ruins that exploration ships discovered. Earth's government called it xenobiology research. But Dr. Choi knew it was more than that. They were learning how alien technology worked, how to copy it, and how to make it better. President Lee had made it clear that while Earth chose peace, they would not be helpless if peace failed. On the other side of known space, Governor Myung-han walked through the green fields of New Bisan Colony. The planet had been a dead rock when humans arrived 5 years ago. Now it was covered with farms that grew food for dozens of worlds. "The soil treatment is working perfectly," said her agriculture chief, a cheerful woman named Sunya who had worked on terraforming projects for 15 years. "We can grow earth crops, plus we've learned to grow food that some alien species like." Myung smiled as they walked between rows of golden wheat and strange blue plants that tasted like honey. "How many worlds are buying our food now?" 47. "Different planets?" Sunya replied proudly. "Even some coalition worlds prefer our food to their own. We're making more money from farming than most planets make from mining." This was the new human way. Instead of fighting wars, they grew food. Instead of conquering planets, they helped make dead worlds come alive. Instead of building weapons, they built tractors and greenhouses. But New Bisan was not just a farm world. Deep underground, in caves that had been carved by machines, workers built things that the galaxy had never seen before. They took alien technology that Dr. Choi's team had studied and combined it with human engineering. Captain Dong Hyun-yoon stood on the bridge of his ship, the Sejong, as it entered orbit around a planet that had no name, only numbers and letters that scientists used. His job was to explore new worlds and make contact with species that humans had never met before. "Captain, we're getting signals from the surface," reported his communications officer, a young woman named the Jin who could speak 12 different alien languages. "It's not like anything in our databases." "Put it on the main screen, Captain." Yoon ordered. The screen showed what looked like giant bubbles floating in the atmosphere of the planet below. Each bubble was the size of a building and glowed with soft light. As they watched, the bubbles began to form patterns, creating shapes and symbols in the sky. "I think they're trying to communicate," the Jin said, excitement in her voice. "The patterns look like mathematics." This was humanity's first contact in 2 years. Captain Yoon had discovered the Ethermotes, beings made of gas who lived in the clouds of their world. Before that, he had met the Verdani, plant-like creatures who grew cities instead of building them. Both species had chosen to work with humans, instead of joining either side in the Galactic War. They liked that humans offered friendship without demanding military service in return. "Prepare a shuttle," Captain Yoon ordered. "Let's go meet our new neighbors." Back on Earth, President Jae-won Lee sat in his office reading reports from all the human colonies. The news was good. Very good. In 3 years, humanity had gone from a small group of worlds to a growing network of successful colonies. "Sir, we have a message from the Coalition," his secretary announced. It was Ambassador Hyun-woo calling from Luna Station where he still worked with alien visitors. "Put him through," President Lee said. Hyun-woo's face appeared on the screen. He looked older than he had 3 years ago, but his eyes were bright with interest. "Mr. President, we've had an unusual request. 3 coalition species want to leave the war and establish neutral colonies near our space." This was not the first such request. As word spread about human success, more and more aliens began to wonder if there was a better way than endless war. Some coalition worlds had started copying human farming techniques. Others had begun trading with human colonies instead of sending resources to the war effort. "What species?" President Lee asked. "The Lumina, who are made of living light, the Korathi, who are rock-based life forms, and the Whisperer folk who communicate through music." Hyun-woo paused. "They say they're tired of watching their people die for a war that never ends." President Lee thought for a moment. "Tell them they're welcome to establish colonies in neutral space, but they must agree to our rules. No weapons of war, no military bases, and no attacking other peaceful species." "Already done, sir." They agreed immediately. This was becoming a pattern. The more successful human colonies became, the more aliens wanted to copy their way of life. Peace was spreading across the galaxy. One world at a time, Dr. Choi had moved her main laboratory to Haven Prime, a mining colony that had become humanity's center for advanced technology research. The planet's caves were perfect for secret projects, and the miners had found rare metals that could be used in ways the galaxy had never imagined. "Doctor, we've had a breakthrough," announced Dr. Kyung-ho Beek, her chief researcher. He was a brilliant man who had once designed weapons for Earth's military, but now used his skills to study alien science. "Show me," Dr. Choi said. Following him to a secure laboratory deep underground, on a table sat what looked like a normal piece of human technology, a computer, a communications device, and a power source. But Dr. Choi knew it was much more than that. "We've combined Vrathan biotechnology with coalition energy systems and human computing," Dr. Beek explained proudly. "The result is a device that can adapt to any situation, learn from experience, and repair itself when damaged." Dr. Choi picked up the device and examined it carefully. It felt warm in her hands, and she could sense that it was somehow alive. "How many of these can we make? With our current resources? Maybe 1,000 units per month. But if we expand the facilities, Dr. Beek smiled, we could make as many as we need." Meanwhile, on Terra Nova, humanity's newest colony, artists and writers worked to create something the galaxy had never seen before. Terra Nova was different from other human worlds. Instead of farms or mines, it was covered with cities full of museums, theaters, and schools. The colony's leader, Director Sang-woo Park, believed that culture was just as important as technology or food. "If we're going to change the galaxy," he often said, "we need to show them a better way to live, not just a better way to fight." Aliens came from across known space to visit Terra Nova. They came to see human art, hear human music, and learn about human philosophy. Many stayed, choosing to live in peace rather than return to the war, but not everyone in the galaxy was happy with humanity's success. In the dark spaces where the Vrathan Empire ruled, things were changing. The Empress who controlled every Vrathan mind was growing angry. Too many of her enemies were choosing peace over war. Too many worlds were becoming neutral instead of joining her empire, and she was beginning to notice the small, peaceful species called humans who seemed to be behind. All these changes, the war between the Coalition and the Vrathan Empire continued, but now it was smaller, quieter. More species were choosing neutrality every month. More worlds were laying down their weapons and picking up farming tools. Humanity had kept their promise to stay out of the war, but they had found a different way to fight, by showing the galaxy that there was an alternative to endless conflict. The question was whether the galaxy's warriors would let them continue in peace. The attack came without warning on a quiet Thursday morning. Dr. Kyung-ho Beek was drinking his morning coffee in the research station cafeteria on Kepler 442b when the lights began to flicker. Around him, other scientists looked up from their breakfast, confused by the strange humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "That's not one of our ships," said Dr. Minasio, a young researcher who specialized in alien languages. She was staring out the large window that showed the planet's purple sky. Dark shapes were moving through the clouds, getting bigger and bigger. Dr. Beek set down his coffee cup and walked to the window. What he saw made his blood run cold. The ships were black as space itself, covered with sharp spikes and glowing red lights. "They looked like angry insects made of metal and hate, Vrathan ships," he whispered. "Everyone needs to get to the emergency shelters now," but it was already too late. The first energy beam struck the research station's main laboratory, turning metal and concrete into glowing vapor. The second beam hit the living quarters where families with children had been sleeping late on their day off. Dr. Beek ran through corridors that were filling with smoke and screaming people. He helped carry injured researchers toward the emergency pods, but the Vrathan ships were too fast and too many. Every few seconds, another part of the station exploded in bright fire. In the final moments before the emergency pod launched, Dr. Beek looked back at the research station that had been his home for 3 years. The building where he had worked to understand alien technology was now a burning ruin. The greenhouse where they had grown Earth vegetables for homesick researchers was gone. The school where human children had played with young aliens from friendly species was melting. 12,000 people had lived and worked on the research station. Only 800 made it to the emergency pods before the Vrathan ships finished their work. The emergency pod drifted in space for 6 hours before a human patrol ship found them. Dr. Beak sat in silence, holding a young girl named Hae-young whose parents had not made it to the pods. Around them, survivors stared at nothing, trying to understand what had happened and why. "Sir," the patrol ship captain said quietly to Dr. Beak, "we're getting reports from other colonies. This wasn't the only attack." 3 hours after the research station died, the Vrathan fleet appeared in orbit around New Bizan. Governor Myung-han was in her office reviewing agricultural reports when her aide, Jin-ho, burst through the door without knocking. "Governor, we have enemy ships in orbit," he said, his face pale with fear. "Lots of them." Mi-young ran to the window and looked up at the sky. Black dots were moving against the blue, growing larger as they descended through the atmosphere. She had seen recordings of Vrathan ships before, but seeing them in person was different. They looked like flying nightmares, designed to bring fear and death. "Sound the evacuation alarm," she ordered. "Get everyone to the underground shelters. And the escape ships, move fast." The alarm began to wail across New Bizan colony. In the fields, farmers dropped their tools and ran toward the emergency shelters. In the cities, families grabbed their children and whatever they could carry. The evacuation plan had been practiced many times, but no one had expected to use it. Mi-young stayed in the command center, coordinating the evacuation and sending desperate messages to Earth. "This is New Bizan colony requesting immediate assistance. We are under attack by Vrathan forces." "Repeat, we are under attack." The reply from Earth came quickly. "New Bizan, this is Admiral Park. We have ships coming, but they won't arrive for 12 hours. You need to evacuate now." "We're trying," Mi-young replied, watching the evacuation reports on her screens. "But we have 3 million people here, and the children's schools are on the far side of the colony." Outside, the Vrathan ships had finished their descent. They hovered over the colony like giant black birds, their red lights pulsing in rhythm. Then the first energy beam fired. The main agricultural center vanished in a flash of white light. The beautiful fields that had fed dozens of worlds became burning ash in seconds. The greenhouses where Sunya had worked so hard to perfect her growing techniques turned to glass and smoke. Mi-young felt tears on her face as she watched her life's work destroyed. 3 years of building, growing, and creating, gone in moments. But there was no time for grief. People were still evacuating. "Governor, the last transport ship is ready to launch," Jin-ho reported. "But there are still people in the shelters who can't fit." Mi-young looked at the evacuation numbers. They had saved 2.5 million people, but 500,000 were still trapped underground. The Vrathan ships were methodically destroying everything on the surface, working their way toward the shelter areas. "Take the ship and go," she told Jin-ho. "I'm staying with the people in the shelters." "Governor, you can't." "Go, that's an order." Mi-young watched the last transport ship rise into the sky and disappear into hyperspace. Around her, the command center shook as Vrathan energy beams struck closer and closer. She opened a communication channel to all the remaining shelters. "This is Governor Han," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Help is coming, but we need to hold on a little longer. Stay in the shelters, stay quiet, and stay together. We're going to get through this." But deep down, she wondered if anyone would survive to be rescued on Earth. President Jae-won Lee stood in the emergency command center, watching reports come in from across human space. The Vrathan Empire had launched simultaneous attacks on 7 human colonies. Most were research stations or agricultural worlds with no military defenses. "Current casualty reports?" he asked Admiral So-min Park, who was coordinating the military response. "Kepler Research Station is completely destroyed. 12,000 dead." Admiral Park's voice was cold with controlled anger. "New Bizan is under heavy attack. We've evacuated most of the population, but the colony is lost. 5 other research outposts are gone." "Why?" President Lee asked. Why attack us now? We stayed out of their war. Intelligence suggests the Vrathan Empress is angry about our influence, Admiral Park replied. Too many coalition species are choosing neutrality instead of fighting. Too many worlds are copying our peaceful methods. She sees us as a threat to her war effort. President Lee stared at the tactical display showing human space. Red markers indicated colonies under attack, or already destroyed. For 6 years, humanity had chosen peace, trade, and cooperation over war. They had built a better way of life among the stars, and now the Vrathan Empire was trying to destroy it all. Mr. President, Admiral Park said quietly, I need your authorization to implement Defense Protocol 7. President Lee looked at her. Defense Protocol 7 was something they had hoped never to use. It would reveal military capabilities that humanity had kept secret for years. It would end their reputation as a peaceful species and turn them into something else entirely. How long until our response fleet reaches New Bizan? He asked. 8 hours, and how long can Governor Han hold out? Unknown. The underground shelters are strong, but if the Vrathan find them, President Lee closed his eyes and thought about the children in the research station school. He thought about the farmers on New Bizan who had worked so hard to feed the galaxy. He thought about all the humans who had died today for no reason except that they had chosen peace over war. When he opened his eyes, his face was hard as stone. You have authorization for Defense Protocol 7, he said. Send a message to all human colonies and ships. As of this moment, humanity is at war with the Vrathan Empire. Admiral Park nodded grimly. I'll prepare the fleet. And Admiral, President Lee added, send a message to the Galactic Coalition. Tell them that Earth has reconsidered their invitation. We're ready to join the fight, yes, sir. What about our neutrality policy? President Lee looked at the reports of burning colonies and dead civilians. The Vrathan Empire ended our neutrality when they decided to murder our children. Now they're going to learn why humanity survived every war we ever fought. For 6 years, Earth had chosen peace. The Vrathan Empire had just made that choice impossible. Now, they would learn what humans were truly capable of when someone hurt their family. Within 72 hours of President Lee's declaration of war, the galaxy discovered that humanity had been lying about almost everything for 6 years. The peaceful farmers and researchers had been busy building the most advanced military force anyone had ever seen. Captain Dong Hyan Yoon stood on the bridge of his new ship, watching the final preparations for humanity's first strike against the Vrathan Empire. But this was not the exploration vessel Sejong that he had commanded for years. This was the Indomitable, a warship that looked like it had been designed by nightmares and built by angels. The ship was black as space, but its hull seemed to shift and change in the light. Strange patterns moved across its surface like living metal energy weapons that had never been seen before extended from hidden ports. Most impressive of all, the ship seemed to repair small damage by itself, healing cuts and burns in its armor like living skin. Captain, all systems are ready, reported his new tactical officer. Lieutenant Commander Wu Jin Nam. Wu Jin had been a fighter pilot before the war started, but now he controlled weapons that could destroy entire enemy fleets. Engineering. Reports ready for combat, called out Chief Engineer Yujin Lee from her station. Yujin was barely 25 years old, but she understood the ship's technology better than anyone else alive. She had helped design the adaptive systems that made human ships unique. All ships in the fleet report ready, announced Communications Officer Dejing, who had transferred from the Sejong to continue serving with Captain Yoon. Her job now was to coordinate between human ships, using quantum communication systems that the enemy could not intercept or block. Captain Yoon looked at the tactical display showing his fleet. 12 ships that looked like the Indomitable hung in space around a small moon near Proxima Tertius. Each ship was different from the others, designed for different types of combat, but all of them shared the same adaptive technology. Fleet. Commanders, this is Captain Yoon, he said over the communication system. Today we fight our first battle as a species at war. The enemy thinks they know what to expect from us. They're wrong. The Vrathan fleet was already waiting at Proxima. Tertius intelligence report said they had 30 ships, each one larger than any human vessel. The Vrathan had been fighting wars for centuries. They had destroyed thousands of worlds and killed billions of beings. They were experienced, ruthless, and completely confident. They were about to learn that experience was not the same as adaptability. "Jump to combat zone," Captain Yoon ordered. Space twisted around the human fleet as they entered hyperspace. The journey to Proxima Tertius took only minutes, but for Captain Yoon it felt like hours. This would be humanity's first real test against an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for decades. When they dropped out of hyperspace, the Vrathan fleet was exactly where intelligence had predicted. 30 black ships covered with spikes and red lights, arranged in a perfect formation that had served them well in 100 battles. They looked like floating cities of death, each one carrying thousands of bioengineered soldiers. "Enemy fleet is hailing us," Dejin reported. "Put them through," Captain Yoon said. The main screen showed a Vrathan commander, a creature that looked like a human but wrong in every way. Its skin was gray and smooth, without any hair or expression lines. Its eyes were completely black, showing no emotion or individual thought. When it spoke, its voice was flat and emotionless. "Human ships, you will surrender immediately. Your species has interfered with the natural order of war. For this crime, your worlds will be destroyed and your people will be dissolved into genetic material for our factories." Captain Yoon studied the alien face on the screen. No fear, no anger, no curiosity. Just cold certainty that they would win, because they always won. "Unknown alien vessel," Captain Yoon replied calmly. "You murdered 12,000 civilians on a research station. You tried to destroy peaceful colonies full of families and children. For these crimes, your fleet will be destroyed and your empire will learn to fear the name of humanity." The Vrathan commander showed no reaction to the threat. "You have 47 seconds to surrender before we begin extermination procedures." "Dajin, close the channel," Captain Yoon ordered. "All ships, prepare for combat. Show them what humans do to bullies." The Vrathan fleet moved first, just as human intelligence had predicted they would. Their ships advanced in perfect formation, firing their energy weapons in coordinated volleys. It was a tactic that had worked against every enemy they had ever faced, but human ships did not fight like any enemy the Vrathan had ever faced. Instead of forming their own battle line, the human ships scattered in all directions. Some dove toward the planet below, others climbed toward the system's star. 2 ships seemed to disappear entirely, using stealth systems that made them invisible to Vrathan sensors. "What are they doing?" asked Wujin, watching the tactical display as human ships moved in patterns that made no military sense. "Something the enemy has never seen before," Captain Yoon replied. "Execute pattern Alpha 7. The first human ship to engage was the Defiant. Commanded by Captain Haijin Kim, her ship appeared directly behind the Vrathan formation, firing weapons that seemed to bend space itself. The energy beams curved around Vrathan shields and struck their ships from impossible angles. 3 Vrathan ships exploded before they could turn to face this new threat. But when they did turn, the Defiant was already gone, vanishing into hyperspace only to reappear somewhere else entirely. "Sir, the enemy is trying to adapt to our tactics," Wujin reported. "They're breaking formation and spreading out." "Perfect," Captain Yoon said with a cold smile. "Now they're fighting our kind of battle." What happened next had never been seen in galactic warfare before. The human ships began to coordinate with each other in ways that seemed impossible. They shared information instantly across vast distances. When one ship learned something about enemy defenses, all the other ships knew it immediately. More importantly, the human ships began to adapt during the battle itself. Their weapons changed frequency to match enemy shield patterns. Their armor shifted to deflect different types of energy beams. Their movement patterns evolved in real time to counter enemy tactics. The Vrathan had experience, but humans had something better, the ability to learn and change faster than any enemy could. Adapt. Commander Wu Jin Nam launched his fighter squadron from the Indomitable's hidden launch bays. His 12 fighters looked like metal birds with weapons instead of feathers. They moved through space like a flock of hunting hawks, each one linked to the others through quantum communication. Taigek Squadron engage enemy fighters, Wu Jin ordered over the CUM system. The Vrathan had launched their own fighters, bioengineered creatures that flew through space without ships. They looked like giant insects with energy weapons for stingers. There were hundreds of them, far more than the 12 human fighters, but numbers meant nothing when one side could think and adapt while the other could only follow programmed instructions. Wu Jin's fighters used tactics that the Vrathan had never encountered. They pretended to retreat, then turned and attacked from unexpected directions. They used the enemy's own weapons against them, reflecting energy beams back at their sources. Most importantly, they learned from every exchange, getting better and more efficient with each passing minute. Within 30 minutes, all the Vrathan fighters were destroyed. Wu Jin's squadron had not lost a single ship. The main battle lasted 2 hours. When it ended, 30 Vrathan ships were floating wreckage in space. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel, though several ships showed damage that was already healing itself. Captain Yoon opened a communication channel to the rest of the human fleet. All ships, excellent work. Send a message to Earth. First engagement successful, no human casualties. But more importantly, they sent a different message to the Vrathan Empire. For the first time in their history, an entire Vrathan fleet had been destroyed without killing a single enemy ship. The impossible had happened. The galaxy was watching, and the galaxy was beginning to understand that the war had just changed forever. News of humanity's victory at Proxima Tertius spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. In Coalition space, military commanders who had fought the Vrathan for decades stared at battle reports that seemed impossible. A small human fleet had destroyed an entire Vrathan armada without losing a single ship. General Taehyun Cho stood in the Coalition's main war room on the planet Nexus Prime, studying holographic displays that showed the battle from every angle. He was a veteran of 40 years of warfare against the Vrathan, and he had never seen anything like what the humans had accomplished. "Play the recording again," he ordered his aide, a young Korathi officer whose rock-like body glowed with excitement. The hologram showed the moment when human ships scattered in all directions, confusing the rigid Vrathan formation. Then came the impossible attacks from multiple angles, the instant adaptation to enemy tactics, and the complete destruction of a fleet that should have been unbeatable. "Sir, we're receiving communication requests from 17 different coalition worlds," the aide reported. "They all want to know the same thing. How did the humans do it?" General Cho had been wondering the same thing. For 6 years, the coalition had watched humanity expand peacefully through space, building farms and research stations instead of military bases. Everyone had assumed that humans were simply not warlike people. Everyone had been wrong. "Get me a direct line to Admiral Park on Earth," General Cho ordered. "I think it's time the Coalition learned what our new allies are really capable of." The call took several minutes to connect across the vast distances of space. When Admiral So-min Park's face appeared on the screen, General Cho saw something in her eyes that he recognized from his own mirror after difficult battles, the look of someone who had made hard choices and was prepared to make more. "General Cho," Admiral Park said with a slight bow of respect. "I assume you're calling about Proxima Tertius." "Among other things," General Cho replied. "Your Captain Yoon's battle report mentions adaptive technology and real-time learning systems. The Coalition would very much like to understand how this is possible." Admiral Park was quiet for a moment, clearly deciding how much to reveal. "General, what do you know about human history?" "Very little, I'm afraid." "Your species is young compared to most Coalition members." "We are young," Admiral Park agreed. "But we learned early that survival requires adaptation. On our home world, we fought wars against ourselves for thousands of years. We learned that the side that adapts fastest usually wins." She paused, then continued. When we decided to stay out of your war 6 years ago, we didn't stop preparing for the possibility that war might come to us. We studied every piece of alien technology we could find. We learned from coalition designs and Vrathan weapons. Then we made them better. How much better? General Cho asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Would you like a demonstration? Admiral Park asked with a cold smile, 3 days later. General Cho stood on the observation deck of his flagship, watching a human fleet approach. The Vrathan-occupied world of Zarian Prime. The planet had been under enemy control for 12 years. 7 coalition fleets had tried to retake it, and all had failed. The human fleet consisted of only 18 ships, far smaller than any of the previous liberation attempts. But General Cho had seen the recordings from Proxima Tertius. He was beginning to understand that with humans, numbers meant very little. Human fleet, this is General Cho, he said over the communication system. Zarian Prime is heavily defended. Intelligence reports show at least 60 Vrathan ships in orbit, plus ground-based defense systems. Understood, General, came the reply from Colonel Hyjin Kim, who had been promoted after her success at Proxima Tertius. We'll have the planet liberated within 12 hours. General Cho wanted to tell her that was impossible, but he had thought the same thing about destroying a Vrathan fleet without casualties. Instead, he simply said, "We'll be standing by to assist if needed." "Thank you, General, but that won't be necessary." The human attack began in a way that made no sense to traditional military thinking. Instead of engaging the orbital defense fleet, the human ships scattered and began attacking targets all across the system. Some ships struck Vrathan supply convoys, others hit communication relays, and several seemed to be attacking empty space. "What are they doing?" asked General Cho's tactical officer, a crystal dominion being whose light patterns showed confusion. "Something we've never tried," General Cho replied. Watching the battle unfold on his screens, it took him an hour to understand the human strategy. They weren't just fighting the ships defending Zarian Prime. They were fighting the entire Vrathan system of control. By attacking supply lines, communication networks, and support facilities, they were forcing the enemy to spread their forces thin. More importantly, they were gathering information with every attack. Each human ship that engaged Vrathan forces sent data back to the others. Within hours, the human fleet knew exactly how every enemy ship would respond to different types of attacks. Then they used that knowledge to destroy the enemy with surgical precision. The battle for Zarian Prime lasted exactly 11 hours and 43 minutes. When it ended, the Vrathan orbital fleet was completely destroyed. The ground-based defenses were silent, and human troops were landing on the planet's surface to liberate the survivors. The human fleet had lost 0 ships. 3 had suffered minor damage that was already repairing itself. General Cho sent his report to Coalition High Command with hands that shook slightly from excitement and fear. Excitement because humanity might actually be able to end the war that had consumed the galaxy for decades. Fear because he was beginning to understand just how powerful Earth's military really was. On the other side of the galaxy, in the dark heart of Vrathan space, Empress Kethmora felt the depths of her fleets through the neural link that connected her to every Vrathan soldier. The sensation was like having thousands of voices suddenly go silent in her mind for the first time in her 300-year reign. The Empress felt something she had never experienced before: doubt. "Bring me the human data files," she commanded. Her servants, bioengineered creatures that existed only to serve her will, the files were extensive. For 6 years, Vrathan intelligence had been monitoring human expansion, noting their peaceful nature and lack of military buildup. The reports all agreed humans were not a threat to the Empire. Those reports were now clearly wrong. How many ships do the humans possess? The Empress asked her intelligence coordinator, a Vrathan whose brain had been enhanced to process vast amounts of information. "Unknown, Empress. They appear to have been building their fleet in secret. Based on recent engagements, we estimate between 500 and 2,000 combat vessels. And their capabilities? Far beyond anything we have encountered. Their ships adapt to our tactics in real time. Their weapons appear to learn from Each engagement. Most disturbing, they coordinate their actions with perfect efficiency across vast distances. The Empress was silent for long minutes, processing this information through the collective consciousness that linked all Vrathan minds. Finally she spoke. Prepare the great fleet, every ship, every soldier, every weapon we possess. We will destroy the human homeworld before they can become a greater threat. Empress, that will leave our other territories undefended. If we do not eliminate humanity now, we may not have territories to defend, the Empress replied coldly. These creatures have done something impossible. They have made me fear. She paused, her black eyes staring into space. And anything that can make the Vrathan Empire feel fear must be destroyed completely. Deep in Earth's command centers, Admiral Park received reports of massive Vrathan fleet movements. The enemy was gathering everything they had for one final, desperate assault on humanity's homeworld. She smiled grimly as she began preparing Operation Homecoming, Earth's ultimate defense plan. The Vrathan thought they were bringing overwhelming force to destroy humanity. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The largest fleet in galactic history appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system on a cold Tuesday morning. 10,000 Vrathan ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their black hulls blocking out the stars. Each ship was the size of a city, carrying thousands of bioengineered soldiers and weapons that could turn planets into dust on Luna Station. Ambassador Hyung-woo Kim watched the enemy fleet through telescopes and felt his heart skip a beat. In all his years of diplomatic work, he had never seen so many warships in one place. The Vrathan had brought everything they had to destroy humanity's homeworld. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the enemy fleet, his assistant Hae-won reported, her voice shaking with fear. Put it through, Hyun-woo said, straightening his shoulders. Even facing certain death, Earth's diplomats would maintain their dignity. The face that appeared on the screen was not like the Vrathan commanders they had seen before. This creature was taller, with silver markings on its gray skin and eyes that held ancient intelligence. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of absolute authority. I am voice of the Empress, speaking for she who rules all, the creature said. Humans of Earth, you have interfered with the natural order of war. You have corrupted our enemies with ideas of peace. You have destroyed fleets that were meant to be invincible. Hyun-woo listened calmly, showing no emotion on his face. And what does your Empress propose to do about this? Your species will be completely eliminated. Your worlds will be sterilized. Your technology will be studied and then destroyed. No trace of humanity will remain in this galaxy. I see, Hyun-woo replied. And you believe 10,000 ships will be enough? For the first time, the Vrathan commander showed a flicker of uncertainty. It is more than enough to destroy any enemy we have ever faced. We are not any enemy you have ever faced, Hyun-woo said quietly. You are about to learn why humanity survived every war we ever fought on our homeworld. You are about to discover what happens when you threaten our families. In the deep command bunkers beneath Earth's surface, President Jae-won Lee coordinated the greatest military operation in human history. Operation Homecoming had been planned for years, designed to defend Earth against any possible attack. But no one had expected to face 10,000 enemy ships. All defense platforms are online, Admiral So-min Park reported from her command station. Every orbital weapon, every hidden base, every secret installation is ready for combat. What about civilian evacuations? President Lee asked. Complete. Every non-essential person has been moved to the underground cities or evacuation ships. The only people left on the surface are volunteers who insisted on staying to help with the defense. President Lee nodded grimly. Those volunteers included teachers who had turned their schools into field hospitals, engineers who had modified civilian ships into improvised weapons, and ordinary citizens who simply refused to abandon their home world. Sir, we're getting reports from across the system, Admiral Park continued. Captain Yoon's fleet is in position near Mars. Colonel Kim's ships are hidden behind Jupiter's moons. Every human ship in the galaxy is coming home to defend Earth. But Even with every human vessel, they were still outnumbered 10-1. The Vrathan Empire had brought enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. The battle began when the Vrathan fleet entered the orbit of Pluto. Hidden weapon platforms that had been disguised as asteroids opened fire, striking the enemy formation with energy beams that bent space itself. Dozens of Vrathan ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, but there were so many enemy vessels that the loss barely slowed them down. The Vrathan fleet continued toward Earth, destroying every human installation they encountered along the way. "They're adapting to our hidden weapons," Admiral Park observed, watching the tactical displays. "Each wave of attacks is less effective than the last." "Then it's time for Phase 2, President Lee said. "Launch all fighter squadrons." Across the solar system, hidden launch bays opened and released thousands of human fighters. These were not the simple interceptors that other species used. These were adaptive combat units that could think, learn, and coordinate with each other in ways no enemy had ever encountered. Commander Wu Jinnam led the first wave of fighters in a desperate attack against the Vrathan advance ships. His Tagex squadron had grown from 12 fighters to 1,200, all of them crewed by pilots who had learned from every previous battle. "All fighters, this is Commander Nam," he said over the communication system. "Today we fight for our families, our friends, and our home. Show these aliens what human pilots can do." The fighter battle was like nothing anyone had ever seen before. Human pilots used tactics that seemed impossible, flying their ships in patterns that looked like aerial dances. They attacked from all directions at once, disappeared into nebulas and asteroid fields, and struck with weapons that the enemy could not predict or counter. But even as hundreds of Vrathan ships fell to the human fighters, the main enemy fleet continued toward Earth. There were simply too many of them to stop with conventional tactics. Deep in her laboratory on Mars, Dr. Yoonji Choi worked frantically on humanity's secret weapon. For months, she had been studying the biological samples recovered from destroyed Vrathan ships. She had discovered something that could change the entire war. "Doctor, the analysis is complete," announced her assistant Taemin, excitement clear in his voice. "Every Vrathan soldier is connected to their empress through biological implants. If we can disrupt that connection, their entire fleet becomes helpless," Dr. Choi finished. "How do we deliver the disruption signal?" "Captain Yoon has volunteers, ready to fly directly into the enemy flagship," Taemin replied. "It's a suicide mission, but if they can get the virus into the Empress's command center, Dr. Choi nodded and began preparing the biological weapon that would either save humanity or doom them all. The final phase of the battle began when the Vrathan fleet reached Earth's orbit. The planet's surface was protected by energy shields that could deflect most attacks, but everyone knew the shields would not hold forever against such overwhelming firepower. Captain Donghaen Yoon led a small team of volunteers in a desperate flight toward the Vrathan flagship. His ship, the Indomitable, had been modified with every stealth system humanity possessed. With him flew Chief Engineer Yoojin Lee and Communications Officer Lejin, both of whom had insisted on joining the mission. "Captain, we're getting massive interference from the enemy fleet," Lejin reported. "They know we're here. Keep us hidden as long as possible," Captain Yoon replied. "We only need a few more minutes." The Vrathan flagship was the size of a small moon, covered with weapons and swarming with defender ships. Getting inside seemed impossible, but human ingenuity had found a way. The Indomitable used its adaptive hull to mimic Vrathan technology. Disguising itself as a damaged enemy vessel, the deception worked. They made it inside the flagship's landing bay and fought their way to the central command center where the Empress herself controlled the battle. Yoojin worked frantically to upload Dr. Choi's virus into the Vrathan command systems while Captain Yoon and the Jin held off enemy soldiers. The battle was desperate, with energy weapons firing in all directions and alien creatures attacking from every corridor. "Upload complete," Yoojin announced, just as a Vrathan energy beam struck her in the chest. She fell, but she was smiling. "The virus is in their system." Across the galaxy, every Vrathan soldier suddenly lost connection to their empress. For creatures who had never thought an independent thought, the experience was terrifying. Ships stopped firing their weapons. Soldiers dropped their rifles and stared around in confusion. The most powerful military force in galactic history had become helpless in an instant. The war ended not with a great battle, but with silence. 10,000 Vrathan ships drifted in space around Earth, their crews too confused and frightened to continue fighting. Some ships tried to retreat, but without central coordination, they flew in circles or crashed into each other. 5 years later, Ambassador Hyun-woo Kim stood in the same observation deck where he had once watched Crystal Dominion ships arrive with an invitation to war. Now he watched ships from dozens of species arriving for very different reasons. They came to Earth not as conquerors or allies in war, but as people seeking help with problems that could not be solved by fighting. Trade disputes, territorial disagreements, and resource conflicts were all brought to human mediators who had proven they could find peaceful solutions. The Galactic Coalition had become the Terran Mediation Council, with Earth at its center. The old system of endless warfare had been replaced by negotiation, compromise, and cooperation. Governor Myung-han had rebuilt New Bizan Colony as a symbol of renewal, where the survivors of the Vrathan attacks worked alongside former enemy soldiers who were learning to think for themselves. Dr. Yoonji Choi continued her research. But now she studied ways to help species communicate better instead of ways to fight more effectively. President Lee, now older but still sharp, often thought about the choice humanity had made 6 years earlier. They had declined to join a war, choosing peace over conflict. The enemy had forced them to fight anyway, but they had fought in their own way, on their own terms. "We chose not to fight their war," he said, Dore.